Benedict IV was Roman. The 10th century historian Flodoard, who nicknamed him the Great, commended his noble birth and public generosity. Benedict was a native of Rome, the son of one Mamalus, and was ordained priest by Pope Formosus. In 900, he excommunicated Count Baldwin II of Flanders for murdering Archbishop Fulk of Reims. In 901, Benedict crowned Louis the Blind as emperor. In 902, Berengar of Friuli defeated Louis III and forced him to leave Italy. Benedict died in Rome during the summer of 903. It is possible that Berengar had some involvement. Benedict was buried in front of St. Peter's Basilica by the Gate of Guido. Leo V was Roman. He was pope immediately before the period known as the Saeculum Obscurum, when popes wielded little temporal authority. During his brief pontificate, Leo granted the canons of Bologna a special bull where he exempted them from the payment of taxes. However, after a reign of a little over 2 months, Leo was captured by Christopher, the cardinal priest of San Lorenzo in Damaso, and thrown into prison. Christopher then had himself elected pope. Although now considered an anti-pope, he had until recently been considered a legitimate pope. If Leo never acquiesced to his deposition, then he can be considered a legitimate pope until his death in 904. Leo died shortly after being deposed. He was either murdered on the orders of Christopher, who was in turn executed by Sergius III in 904, or possibly both were ordered to be killed at the beginning of Sergius's pontificate, either on the orders of Sergius himself or by the direction of Sergius's patron, Theophylact I of Tusculum. According to Horace K. Mann, it is more likely that Leo died a natural death in prison or in a monastery. Sergius III was Roman. He was pope during a period of violence and disorder in central Italy, when warring aristocratic factions sought to use the material and military resources of the papacy. At the behest of Theophylact I of Tusculum, Sergius seized the papal throne from anti-pope Christopher, who in turn had deposed Pope Leo V. Sergius's reign was subsequently marked by Theophylact's influence. As pope, Sergius continued many ecclesiastical controversies of his predecessors, including conflict over Pope Formosus's legacy, annulling all ordinations made by the late pope, and the Filioque controversy with Eastern patriarchs. His pontificate was similarly marked by temporal conflicts, with Sergius's refusal to crown Berengar I of Italy as Holy Roman Emperor, and his support of Byzantine Emperor Leo VI the Wise's fourth marriage. Sergius also saw the restoration of the Lateran Palace. Sergius III had reputedly ordered the murder of his 2 immediate predecessors, Leo V and Christopher, and allegedly fathered an illegitimate son who later became Pope, John XI. His pontificate has been variously described as dismal and disgraceful and efficient and ruthless. Anastasius III was Roman. A Roman nobleman, Lucian, is sometimes recognized as his father, although other sources assert that he was the illegitimate son of his predecessor, Pope Sergius III. Almost nothing is recorded of Pope Anastasius III, his pontificate falling in the period when Rome and the papacy were in the power of Theophylact I of Tusculum and Theodora, who approved Anastasius III's candidacy. Under his reign, the Normans of Rollo were evangelized. Anastasius III's papacy faced renewed threats from the Saracens after they established themselves on the Garigliano River. He was buried in St. Peter's Basilica. Lando was Roman. His short pontificate fell during an obscure period in papal and Roman history, the so-called Saeculum Obscurum. According to the Liber Pontificalis, Lando was born in the Sabina, and his father was a wealthy Lombard count named Taino from Fornovo. The Liber also claims that his pontificate lasted only 4 months and 22 days. Lando is thought to have been the candidate of Count Theophylact I of Tusculum and Senatrix Theodora, who were the most powerful couple in Rome at the time. The Theophylacti controlled papal finances through their monopoly of the office of Vestararius, and also controlled the Roman militia and senate. During Lando's reign, Arab raiders, operating from their stronghold on the Garigliano River, destroyed the Cathedral of San Salvatore in Vescovio in his native diocese. No document of Lando's chancery has survived. The only act of his reign that is recorded is a donation to the Diocese of Sabina mentioned in a judicial act of 1431. Lando made the large personal gift in order to restore the Cathedral of San Salvatore, so that the clergy who were then living at Toffia could return. John X was Roman. A candidate of the Counts of Tusculum, he attempted to unify Italy under the leadership of Berengar of Friuli. During his 8 years as Archbishop, John worked hard with Sergius in an unsuccessful attempt to depose Louis the Blind and have Berengar of Friuli, who claimed the Kingdom of Italy, crowned emperor in his stead. He would create an alliance with the Italian princes and Byzantine Empire to oust the Saracens that had built an outpost on the Garigliano River, where John would personally go into battle. He would forbid the ordination of anyone ignorant of Latin and the conduction of Mass in Slav tongue, with the sole exception of a priestly shortage. John would send a representative to crown the Bulgarian Tsar Simeon's son Peter I as Tsar in 927, and later to halt a war between the Bulgarians and Croatians. In addition, John supported the monastic reform movement at Cluny Abbey. He would oversee the integration of the Mozarabic rite, the conversion of the Normans, pilgrimages from England to Rome, the restoration of the Lateran Basilica, and giving the Archbishop of Bremen jurisdiction over Scandinavian peoples. The power struggle between John X and Guy of Tuscany and Marozia came to a conclusion in 928. Guy was killed and John was thrown into a dungeon, where he remained until he died, either by suffocation or depression. Leo VI was Roman. Tradition has it that he was a member of the Sanguini family. Leo was elected pope during a period of anarchy. He was chosen by the senatrix Marozia, who had gained control of Rome via the domination of her husband Guy, Margrave of Tuscany, and who had ordered the imprisonment and death of Leo's predecessor, John X. During his brief pontificate, Leo confirmed the decisions of the Synod of Spalato. He completed his predecessor's investigations into the ecclesiastical situation in Dalmatia and proceeded to give the pallium to Archbishop John of Salona and ordered all the bishops of Dalmatia to obey him. Leo then banned castrati from marrying. He also issued an appeal for help against the Arab raiders who were threatening Rome, stating that whoever died faithful in this struggle will not see himself refused entry into the heavenly kingdom. The chronicler Flodoard said of him, "Through the virtue of Peter, Leo VI was taken and received. He was preserved for 7 months and 5 days, and like his predecessors, he joined the company of the prophets. He was buried at St. Peter's Basilica." Stephen VII was Roman. A candidate of the infamous Marozia, his pontificate occurred during the period known as the Saeculum Obscurum. Stephen was a Roman by birth, the son of Germanic Goth Theodemundus, or Theodemund. He was the cardinal priest of St. Anastasia in Rome. He was probably handpicked by Marozia, the true ruler of Rome during the Saeculum Obscurum, to become pope as a stopgap measure until her own son John was ready to assume the role. Very little is known about Stephen's pontificate. During his 2 years as pope, Stephen confirmed the privileges of a few religious houses in France and Italy. As a reward for helping free Stephen from the oppression of Hugh of Arles, Stephen granted Conte di Gabrielli the position of papal governor of Gubbio and control over a number of key fortresses. Stephen was also noted for the severity with which he treated clergy who strayed in their morals. He was also, apparently, according to a hostile Greek source from the 12th century, the first pope who went around clean-shaved whilst pope. Stephen died around the 15th of March, 931, and was succeeded by Marozia's son, John XI. John XI was Roman. The true ruler of Rome at the time was his mother Marozia, followed by his brother Alberic II. John was the son of Marozia, the most powerful woman in Rome, and the wife of Alberic I at the time of John's birth. According to hostile chronicler Liutprand of Cremona and the Liber Pontificalis, John's father was not Alberic, but Marozia's lover, Pope Sergius III. Marozia was the de facto ruler of Rome at the time, and she used her power and influence to ensure that John, who held the titulus of Santa Maria in Trastevere, was elected to the papacy in March 931. Following the overthrow of Marozia and her husband Hugh of Italy around late 932, John XI fell under the control of his brother Alberic II. After being initially imprisoned, he was confined to the Lateran Palace for the remainder of his pontificate. During this time, the only authority left to John was the exercise of his purely spiritual duties. All other jurisdiction was exercised through Alberic II. This was not only the case in secular but also in ecclesiastical affairs. John XI sat in the chair of Peter during what some traditional Catholic sources consider its deepest humiliation, subjugated under the authority of the Prince of Rome. But it was also he who granted many privileges to the Congregation of Cluny, which was later a powerful agent of church reform. Leo VII was Roman. His election to the papacy in 936, after the death of Pope John XI, was secured by Alberic II of Spoleto, the ruler of Rome at the time. Alberic wanted to choose the pope so that the papacy would continue to yield to his authority. Leo was the priest of the Church of San Sisto Vecchio in Rome, thought to be a Benedictine monk. He had little ambition towards the papacy, but consented under pressure. As pope, Leo VII reigned for only 3 years. Most of his bulls were grants of privilege to monasteries, especially including the Abbey of Cluny. Leo called for Odo of Cluny to mediate between Alberic and King Hugh of Italy. Odo was successful in negotiating a truce after arranging a marriage between Hugh's daughter Alda and Alberic. Leo VII also appointed Archbishop Frederick of Mainz as a reformer in Germany. Leo allowed Frederick to drive out the followers of the Talmud that refused to be baptized, but he did not endorse the forced baptism of the followers of the Talmud, as that would create followers without actual faith. He was interred at St. Peter's Basilica. Stephen VIII was Roman. His pontificate occurred during the Saeculum Obscurum, when the power of popes was diminished by the ambitious counts of Tusculum, and was marked by the conflict between his patron, Alberic II of Spoleto, and King Hugh of Italy. He would aid Louis IV of West Francia with his rebellious vassals led by Hugh the Great and Herbert II of Vermandois, who sought aid from King Otto I of Germany by threatening any that did not swear loyalty to the Frankish king with excommunication. Domestically, he would be caught between the war between Alberic II of Spoleto, the de facto ruler of the Papal States, and King Hugh of Italy. After failing to assassinate Stephen, Alberic would crack down his enemies, which in turn brought about the maiming and torture of Stephen by the supporters of Alberic. On the 17th of August 942, Alberic summoned a council in Rome, where he demonstrated his control over the papacy by making use of various papal officials, such as the Primicarius, the Secundicarius of the notaries, and the Vestararius. Marinus II was Roman. He ruled during the Saeculum Obscurum. He was also erroneously called Martin III, leading to the second pope, named Martin taking the name Martin IV. Marinus was born in Rome, and prior to becoming pope, he was attached to the Church of St. Cyriacus in the Baths of Diocletian. He was said to have encountered Ulrich of Augsburg on his visit to Rome in 909, and reportedly predicted Ulrich's eventual appointment as Bishop of Augsburg. Marinus was elevated to the papacy on the 30th of October 942 through intervention of Alberic II of Spoleto. This period is known as Saeculum Obscurum, due to the power of Alberic and his relatives over the popes. Marinus concentrated on administrative aspects of the papacy and sought to reform both the secular and regular clergy. He extended the appointment of Archbishop Frederick of Mainz as papal vicar and missus Dominicus throughout Germany and Francia. Marinus later intervened when the Bishop of Capua seized without authorization a church which had been given to the local Benedictine monks. In fact, throughout his pontificate, Marinus favored various monasteries, issuing a number of bulls in their favor. Marinus occupied the palace built by Pope John VII atop the Palatine Hill in the ruins of the Domus Gaiana. Agapetus II was Roman, nominated by Alberic II of Spoleto, the de facto ruler of the Papal States. Agapetus was born to a Roman father, who was a descendant of Consul Anicius Faustus Albinus Basilius and a Greek mother. The struggle between Berengar II and Otto I for the Kingdom of Italy allowed Alberic to exercise complete control over Rome and Agapetus, meaning the Pope was largely limited to managing internal church affairs. Even Agapetus's invitation to Otto to intervene in Italian affairs in 951 was done at the instigation of Alberic, who was growing concerned at Berengar's growing power. However, when Otto's envoys, the bishops of Mans and Chur, were sent to the Pope to discuss Otto's reception in Rome and other more important questions, they were turned away by Alberic. He would spend much of his time settling disputes between the territories of archbishops throughout Western and Central Europe. In Italy, he would expand and retrieve monastic territory. Agapetus died on the 8th of November 955 and was succeeded by Alberic's son, Octavian, who took the papal name of John XII. He was buried in the Lateran Basilica, behind the apse and close to the tombs of Leo V and Paschal II. Agapetus was noted for his caution and for the sanctity with which he led his life. John XII's pontificate became infamous for the alleged depravity and worldliness with which he conducted his office. An attempt at a revolt in support of John was mounted by the inhabitants of Rome even before Otto I left the city, but was put down. However, upon the emperor's departure, John XII returned at the head of a large company of friends and retainers, causing Leo VIII to flee to the emperor for safety. John XII was Roman. He was related to the Counts of Tusculum, a powerful Roman family which had dominated papal politics for over half a century. Octavianus was the son of Alberic II of Spoleto, patrician and self-styled Prince of Rome. He became pope in his late teenage years or early 20s. In 960, he clashed with the Lombards to the south. Unable to control Rome easily, he sought help from King Otto I of Germany and crowned him emperor. Entering Rome in February 964, John proceeded to summon a synod which pronounced his deposition as uncanonical. After mutilating some of his enemies, he again was the effective ruler of Rome. Sending Otgar, Bishop of Speyer, to the emperor, he attempted to come to some accommodation with Otto. But before anything could come of it, John XII died on the 14th of May, 964. According to Liutprand of Cremona, John died whilst enjoying an adulterous sexual encounter outside Rome, either as the result of apoplexy or at the hands of an outraged husband. Benedict V was Roman. He was overthrown by Emperor Otto I. The Roman people, unhappy with the election of Leo VIII as Pope, recalled John XII. John convened a synod which condemned Leo, in which Benedict took part. However, with John's death, the Roman people again rejected Leo, who fled from Rome and joined Otto at Rieti in central Italy. After a violent struggle between rival factions, the Romans elected Benedict instead, who was acclaimed by the city militia. Prior to his coronation as Pope, envoys were sent to Otto, informing them of their decision. The emperor rejected their decision out of hand and warned them not to proceed. Returning to Rome, they decided to ignore Otto. Benedict was consecrated bishop and crowned pope on the 22nd of May, 964. The Romans swore an oath to Benedict that they would not abandon him and would protect him against Otto. Otto, however, upon hearing the news, resolved to restore his candidate as pope and would successfully march on Rome. At the synod, Benedict threw himself at Leo's feet and acknowledged his guilt. The ex-pope was moved to Hamburg and placed under the care of Adeldag, Archbishop of Hamburg-Bremen. Leo VIII was Roman, first to be an anti-pope and later became a legitimate pope. Born in Rome in the region around the Clivus Argentarius, Leo came from an illustrious noble family. He was the son of John, who held the office of protonotary. He would be a layperson serving as papal scribe prior to becoming pope. After defeating John XII, Otto would have the Roman nobility swear an oath over the tomb of St. Peter of loyalty to Leo. He issued numerous bulls, many of which detailed the granting of privileges to Otto and his successors. Some of the bulls were alleged to grant the Holy Roman Emperors the right of choosing their successors in the Kingdom of Italy and the right to nominate the Pope, and all popes, archbishops, and bishops were to receive investiture from the emperor. In addition, Leo is also claimed to have relinquished to Otto all the territory of the Papal States that had been granted to the Apostolic See by Pepin the Short and Charlemagne. Leo VIII died on the 1st of March 965 and was succeeded by John XIII. According to the Liber Pontificalis, he was described as venerable, energetic, and honorable. He had a number of streets dedicated to him in and around the Clivus Argentarius, including the Descensus Leonis Prothi. John XIII was Roman. His pontificate was caught up in the continuing conflict between the Holy Roman Emperor, Otto I, and the Roman nobility. After long and arduous negotiations, he succeeded in arranging a Byzantine marriage for Otto II in an effort to legitimize the Ottonian claim to imperial dignity. He also established church hierarchy in Poland and Bohemia. John was the son of another John, who was a bishop. It has been conjectured that his father was the Roman noble John Crescentius, a member of the Crescentii family who had married into the family of Count Theophylact, the first of Tusculum. Consequently, John was probably the brother of Crescentius the Elder, the Patricius Romanorum, as well as Stephania, Lady of Palestrina, who married Count Benedict, rector of the Sabina, and Marozia, who married Count Gregory I of Tusculum. In 969, he met Gerber d'Aurillac, the future Pope Sylvester II, and was so impressed by his scholarly brilliance that he kept him on in Rome in order to learn from him. He was buried in the Basilica of St. Paul, outside the walls. Referred to by one chronicler after his death as the Good, John was noted for his reverence and piety, as well as being highly learned in both scripture and canon law. Benedict VI was Roman. His brief pontificate occurred in the political context of the establishment of the Holy Roman Empire, during the transition between the reigns of Otto I and Otto II, incorporating the struggle for power of Roman aristocratic families such as the Crescentii and Tusculani. The son of a Roman of German ancestry named Hildebrand. Prior to becoming pope, he was the cardinal deacon of the Church of St. Theodore. Installed as pope under the protection of Otto I, Benedict was seen as a puppet of the emperor by the local Roman aristocracy, who resented the emperor's dominance in Roman civil and ecclesiastical affairs. Record of Benedict VI's reign as pope is scant. He is known to have confirmed privileges assumed by certain monasteries and churches. Led by Crescentius the Elder and Cardinal Deacon Franco Ferrucci, who had been the preferred candidate of the anti-Ottonian faction, Benedict was taken in June 974 and imprisoned in the Castel Sant'Angelo, at that time a stronghold of the Crescentii. Ferrucci was then proclaimed as the new pope, taking the name Boniface VII. Hearing of the overthrow of Benedict VI, Otto II sent an imperial representative, Count Sicco, to demand his release. Unwilling to step down, Boniface ordered a priest named Stephen to murder Benedict whilst he was in prison, strangling him to death. Benedict VII was Roman. Benedict was born in Rome, the son of David or Deodatus and nephew of Alberic II of Spoleto. He was also connected to the Conti family. Before his accession to the papacy, he served as Bishop of Sutri. Benedict VII was elected pope by the Roman clergy and people in October 974 under the influence of Sicco, envoy of Emperor Otto II. He ascended as a compromise candidate to replace Boniface VII, who had caused the death of Pope Benedict VI, usurped the pontificate, and in a month plundered the Vatican of its most valuable contents. He then escaped to Constantinople. The new pope's authority was opposed by Boniface VII and his supporters, and although the anti-pope himself was forced to flee, his party followed fiercely in his footsteps and compelled Benedict to call upon Otto II for help. Once he was firmly established on his throne by the emperor, he showed himself both desirous of checking the tide of simony which was rising high in the church, and of advancing the cause of monasticism. In March 981, Benedict presided over a synod in St. Peter's that prohibited simony. In September 981, he convened a Lateran synod. Benedict VII died in 984 and was interred at Santa Croce in Jerusalem. John XIV was Pavese. Canepanova was born at Pavia. He was Bishop of Pavia and served as Imperial Arch-Chancellor for Italy of Emperor Otto II. His earliest document in that capacity dates from the 28th of December 980, and the latest from the 27th of August 983. Pope Benedict VII died in 983. Empresses Adelaide and Theophanu, Otto II's mother and wife respectively, wished to enthrone Majolus of Cluny as the new pope, but he refused, and Pietro Canepanova was chosen instead. Canepanova took the papal name John XIV to avoid being linked to St. Peter. Otto II died shortly after his election, his heir Otto III being only 3 years old and unable to protect John's position. Antipope Boniface VII, on the strength of the popular feeling against the new pope, returned from Constantinople and placed John XIV in prison in the Castel Sant'Angelo, where he died either from starvation or poison. John XV was Roman. He was the first pope who canonized a saint. The origins of the investiture controversy stem from John XV's pontificate, when the dispute about the deposition of Archbishop Arnulf of Reims soured the relationship between the Capetian kings of France and the Holy See. John XV was the son of Leo, a Roman presbyter. Before he became pope in August 985, John was cardinal priest of St. Vitalis. John XV's venality and nepotism made him very unpopular with the citizens of Rome. John was a patron and protector of the reforming monks of Cluny. He would come into conflict with Hugh Capet over the authority Hugh had given, and wished to take away from the Archbishop of Reims, Arnulf the Carolingian. This would last until Hugh's death. He was the first in history to make a solemn canonization as a pope. In 996, Otto III undertook a journey to Italy to obtain an imperial coronation from the pope. But John XV died of fever early on April 1st, 996, while Otto III lingered in Pavia until the 12th of April to celebrate Easter. The emperor then elevated his own cousin Bruno to the papal dignity under the name of Gregory V. Gregory V was Saxon. He was a member of the Salian dynasty. He was made pope by his cousin, Emperor Otto III. Politically, Gregory V acted consistently as the emperor's representative in Rome and granted many privileges to monasteries within the Holy Roman Empire. King Robert II of the Franks, who had been insisting on his right to appoint bishops, was ultimately forced to back down and also to put aside his wife, Bertha of Burgundy, by threat of excommunication on the kingdom. Until the conclusion of the Council of Pavia in 997, Gregory V had a rival in the person of the antipope John XVI, whom Crescentius II and the nobles of Rome had chosen against the will of the youthful Emperor Otto III, Gregory's cousin. The revolt of Crescentius II was decisively suppressed by the emperor, who marched upon Rome. John XVI fled, and Crescentius II shut himself up in the Castel Sant'Angelo. The emperor's troops pursued the anti-pope, captured him, cut off his nose and ears, cut out his tongue, blinded him, and publicly degraded him before Otto III and Gregory V. When the much-respected St. Nilus of Rossano castigated both the emperor and pope for their cruelty, John XVI was sent to the monastery of Fulda in Germany. Crescentius II would later be hanged from his castle walls. Gregory V died suddenly, not without suspicion of foul play, on the 18th of February 999. He is buried in St. Peter's Basilica near Pope Pelagius I. Sylvester II was Aurillacois and the first pope from what is today France. He endorsed and promoted study of Arab and Greco-Roman arithmetic, mathematics, and astronomy, reintroducing to Europe the abacus and armillary sphere, which had been lost to Latin Europe since the end of the Greco-Roman era. He is said to be the first in Europe to introduce the decimal numeral system using the Hindu-Arabic numeral system. He is credited with the invention of the first mechanical clock in 996. With imperial support, Gerbert was elected to succeed Gregory V as Pope in 999. As Pope, He took energetic measures against the widespread practices of simony and concubinage among the clergy, maintaining that only capable men of spotless lives should be allowed to become bishops. In 1001, the Roman populace revolted, forcing Otto III and Sylvester II to flee to Ravenna. Otto III led 2 unsuccessful expeditions to regain control of the city, and died on a 3rd expedition in 1002. Sylvester II returned to Rome soon after the emperor's death, although the rebellious nobility remained in power, and died a little later. Sylvester is buried in St. John Lateran. Gerbert of Aurillac was a humanist long before the Renaissance. He read Virgil, Cicero, and Boethius. He studied Latin translations of Porphyry and Aristotle. He had a very accurate classification of the different disciplines of philosophy. Gerbert was said to be one of the most noted scientists of his time.